It's like a first date, right? I don't know you, you don't know me. We'll just sit and look at each other. I'll start talking. We move on to hands on the keyboard. Are we filming?
Filming.
Okay, so I can't curse or say anything like that. Okay, so I'll give you a formal introduction of myself. This is the introduction to packet capture and analysis using TCP dump and Wireshark. And a background about me. My name is Joshua Brunty. I go by Josh. I'm a professor of digital forensics at Marsh University, right down the road here in Huntington, West Virginia. I teach intro to Linux courses, network forensics, forensic image and video analysis, intro to digital forensics, you name it, in the program I'll probably teach it. But I am primarily a Linux / network person. I've been doing that for a number of years. In my prior life, I was a tech leader, digital forensics in a state lab here, and QA manager, which was basically getting all of their quality documents together, making sure everyone was trained, basically drafting the standards. And even further back than that, I was an examiner, so I did a lot of casework in these particular types of cases before being hired as a professor back in 2012. So come with that experience of being the academician, or is that how you say that, the academic person, along with being an actual practicing an examiner as well. Did that for about 7-8 years before I started teaching. So as far as what I do as well, I am the #1 troll to ONSI. Follow him on Twitter. This guy goes by the name of Bill Gardner. And, it's if you follow him, you usually try to control him pretty heavy, give him a hard time, make his life a lot harder than it needs to be. So maybe around 3 o'clock, he's supposed to speak down the hallway. We may have to take a quick break so I can go down there and crash his presentation and tell on him. So bear with me there. Also, once ONSI stood in line with him at a Burger King and went to drink with him. So that's my claim to fame. This went a lot better in my head, by the way. Right there, that's a picture of me. I just happened to be on the news last year, stopped a jewelry thief around Christmas. So, funny story, but we'll save that for some fire talks another time. As far as books, one of the things I want to go ahead and outline book-wise is where do I get a lot of this from? What do I pass off to the students? What do I recommend the students read? And one of them is the book that we use in the network forensics course, which is Jonathan Hamm and Sherry Davidoff's book, which is called Network Forensics. This is stuff that I'm going to be pulling from tomorrow. Really, really good book. It starts out kind of slow, gives you an intro level, then it really, really goes 50 Shades of Grey as far as getting you into the network. Good book. It's required reading for one of my classes. So if you really want to pick up more on this side of the woods, pick up that. Also, No Starch has a book. I'm not trying to plug these, but I'm not getting any money for these whatsoever. These are just good books that I like to pick up, which is The Practice of Network Security Learning. This has a whole chapter in it on Wireshark. Very, very low level, but it gets into how to set up Wireshark, things that we're going to cover today, basically. Another thing as well, if you don't follow along with Laura Chappelle has a lot of YouTube tutorials on this, so a lot of the stuff that I'm giving you today is a lot of the stuff that I just learned from her, to be honest. She runs the whole Wireshark University, and they really get deep into how to use Wireshark for a number of different means. They're not forensic people, they're network people. And keep in mind of what Wireshark is originally made to do. It's made to analyze network traffic. It's not made to capture traffic for forensic means. So, remember that when you're setting this up, and you're working with this, hey, I may need to adjust some settings on here. Those 3 books, I provided the link to you, and I'm going to give you a copy of this PowerPoint as well. So one of the things that I would really recommend for this session is to get a hold of SIFT. SIFT is one thing I'm really going to get deep into tomorrow. So I strongly recommend you guys coming back tomorrow, because we're going to one of the pieces of evidence I'm going to give you today, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into tomorrow. So it's like let's take the foundation, take one stair step up, and then we'll start climbing the hill tomorrow. Kali will also work as well. So I'm not going to bottleneck you guys if you're going over to another section and you're using Kali to say, okay, download SIF. SIF's the end all be all. No, they're both Linux distros. They'll work just fine. So I've given you, there's a link there. Also, there's a bit.ly link. If you follow that bit.ly link, I promise it's not clickbait. It will take you to a Dropbox, and inside of that Dropbox, there's a zip file. Benny also has taken those same files and he's uploaded to the SecureWV server. So there's two ways you can get a hold of those. I don't have the SecureWV link, so I'm going to go ahead and give you that link there. There's a PowerPoint, and there should be maybe 2, if not 3 PCAP files in there that we're going to go through today. So the stuff that I'll cover and walk through, you can take those PCAP files and you can play around on your own. So, as far as like passwords or anything that you find in there, I believe I've scrubbed all of my personal Facebook content out there. And yes, I did capture some Facebook content, but it's like 5 or 6 years old, so my password's changed. Had a couple of students found a Facebook password in there, and like, oh my gosh, I've changed that probably 15 times since then. Also, Wireshark. What I'd preferably want you guys to grab is version 2. That's where all the screenshots and the presentation's coming from. So there's a version 1, version 2. Version 1 is looks-wise significantly different than version 2. So I would probably go out and grab the version 2 of that. It just dropped this summer, so there's still some things that I'm trying to learn in version 2. So bear with me if I can't find a menu. It's probably because I'm still fumbling around version 2, but I know it fairly well, so we should be okay. Also, I'm going to run Wireshark in Linux. I'm going to show you how to run Wireshark in Linux. That's another thing that a lot of people just won't spend a lot of time on. How to effectively run Wireshark in Linux, how to capture packets in Linux, and why I would prefer running things in Linux over running this stuff in Windows. There's a lot of overhead in running Wireshark in Windows and doing packet capturing in Windows. And save yourself the trouble, learn Linux. Also, if you're a Linux user and you want to grab it, make sure just do a simple apt-get install. Just run that command, whatever Linux distro you're running. You should be able to pull it down and grab it. Do the Qt version of it. You'll get if you're running Ubuntu or Kali, that way you can grab the version 2 of it. I'll go through that here shortly when I set up SIF. So one of the things that I want to put out there, because we're at a security conference, is what do we use Wireshark for? Now, Wireshark is used for decoding and analyzing captured traffic. That's what its intended function is to do. We also use it to extract contents of packets and packet files. That's what we refer to as PCAPs. So if you hear me talking about PCAPs, for you new folks in the room, that's what the output file from a packet capture is. We usually save it as a PCAP or a PCAPX. We probably recommend going with the PCAP file for portability's sake. Now, what do we not use Wireshark for? And these are the questions I always get at security cons when I'm teaching at these things, is that it's not made to capture large amounts of traffic. Meaning that I have people saying, well, I'll just put this listener out there and I'll just start capturing packets for days and days and days. Packets for days. No, don't do that, because you're going to have so much to search through. It's like saving stuff that you cannot possibly carve through. It's just not a good idea. There's things that are for that. There are other easier ways to go about life than doing that. That being said, Wireshark is not a SIM or a firewall. It's not the same thing. It really isn't. Firewall rules and firewall logs and SIM logs are two completely separate things. So this is not going to be one of those, I'm going to show you how to bring a log file into Splunk or how to bring it into Elk and process it and do searching against that. We're not intending for this session to be one of those types of sessions. If you want that type of session, there's a course down at Marsh University called Network Forensics you can take. SANS has the same course as well, if you want to learn how to process those particular rules. So I know a lot of people walk out and their hands are in their pockets like, I don't know how to carve my firewall logs. Well, go out and grab a copy of Splunk or Elk and pick up that kind of training. Also, it's really not a real-time network monitoring tool. I see a lot of people say, well, I'll just fire up Wireshark and I'll just start monitoring my network and looking for security events. No, don't do it. That's not what it's intended to do. This is not a 24/7 monitoring tool. This is one of those things where if we have a breach or we have an event that we can pop in there and kind of do an instant response on and say, okay, what's going on down there? It's kind of like the ambulance of tools, right? Or it's the field surgeon. It's the triage of tools. Let's go in. Let's see what's going on at a very, very low level. Let's capture the traffic and then try to reconstruct that traffic. So if we have like a persistent threat, or if we have an event that keeps occurring that we want to capture traffic on, that's one of the things that we want to do. If you're wanting a real-time network monitoring tool, pick up an IDS or learn about IDSs, intrusion detection systems. There's a lot of blinky light boxes out there, and there's a lot of people that know how to bypass the blinky light box system as well. But this is really not. Wireshark is not intended to monitor network traffic. It is made, or at least on a permanent basis. On a temporary basis, yes. And I'll go over the reasons why we don't want to keep a packet capture running 24/7. There's a lot of limitations behind that. Now, one of the things I'm going to go through first is just a simple overview of TCP dump. You're probably saying, well, I came in here expecting to learn Wireshark, and you're going to throw TCP dump at me. Well, there's a reason behind that. There is a more efficient way to capturing packets than just running standard Wireshark. It is easier to run Wireshark, but there's a reasoning that I throw TCP dump in here. So TCP dump basically is a Unix-based or terminal-based tool that will allow you to intercept packets. So it has filtering options in it to just basically capture the packets of interest. So it's really kind of like the stripped-down version of Wireshark, which is what we refer to as T-Shark as well, but basically allows us to capture the packet traffic to bring into Wireshark for further analysis. Now, we all usually don't have, or sometimes don't have, the luxury of capturing packets in a graphical-based environment. How many of you guys run servers that you have no GUI environment? Okay, so quite a few people. Ubuntu Server, Apache, there's a lot of distros out there that you just don't have the luxury just to log in and run your mouse around and do things. So in those type of scenarios, this is why, as long as you have a shell, as long as you have pseudo privileges, you can run TCP dump on that particular network. You can also, if you're running a Windows machine, and you could point it to that portion of the network as well. So you don't necessarily have to run Wireshark within Windows to capture Windows-based traffic. So there's really no such thing as Windows-based traffic, but traffic is traffic on the network. So that's why I'm going to go through some TCP dump stuff. One of the things we can do as well, we can read from a trace file using the -R option. So the -R option will allow us to bring that content back into TCP dump to read it. Which is pretty easy to do. It sounds a little bit harder than it actually is. You can also create files with the W option, which is a fairly useful thing. If I'm capturing packets, I can deploy a TCP dump and just let it run, for 6, 8, 24 hours, go back, pull it, stop my capture, save it out to a capture file. It'll be a fairly large capture file, but then we can bring it into Wireshark and then actually start parsing through that traffic. T-Shark is the same thing. If you've ever heard of T-Shark, T-Shark is what I would call the command line version or the terminal version of Wireshark. It's scaled down, so it allows us to run that from the terminal. I'm going to show you the output of this, but I'm not going to get into T-Shark per se, because T-Shark and TCP dump are essentially, they are, but they aren't the same tool. And for time and just the amount of effort, I don't want to give you guys an enema of just command and stuff. I want to actually get into Wireshark and looking at the useful stuff. So we're not going to spend a ton of time on it. But as far as behavior and flags, it's very similar to TCP dump. So if I cover TCP dump, then you probably have a good solid foundation on how to work T-Shark as well. So basically, this is all going to build up to the crescendo of taking a packet traces and then bringing them into Wireshark. So I want to go through those menu options. So apologies to the camera guy because I'm going to be sitting down a couple of times to do this, or I may just sit down and stay down. Is that probably a better option? Is that okay if I do that? Doesn't matter?
Your call.
My call. Okay, awesome. So what I might do is I might just sit and just, you guys be okay if I'm not standing? Nobody objects to that, right? It's a small group, so I'll probably just go.
And you do care if you're in the background?
You can be the background, just have the anxious faces and whatnot. So this is what TCP dump looks like in a capture-based environment. And the reason I flashed this up is I want to show you, or I want you to be able to see what is being captured. So what happens when a packet is being captured, and what does that look like on the screen? So this is really a first few lines of the output of a TCP dump capture. So I want to break these down. So let's look at what a packet conveys. And you've heard of a packet before, and I'm not going to, harp on, network packets, but, you probably, all of us in this room, I'm assuming just by virtue of being here, you understand that network data is sent over via packets. But I want to break this down for you. So usually in a TCP dump packet, you'll find that data is saved, usually starts out with a timestamp. Now this can vary of how this reports. So in this case, I just started a standard packet capture in TCP dump, and this is what I had, so I broke it down. So normally you'll have a time, and then you'll have a dot, and usually it's a breakdown in milliseconds. Sometimes you may see Unix time in this, but usually it's the raw time, UTC time, broken down into milliseconds. So, as far as folks who do network admin for a living can look at latency of packets to see when they come in and what the gap is between those packets. Second one, you're looking at, most of the time you can determine by the second part of that packet whether or not it's an IP packet or not. Now we're looking at the source host name. So I have a source host name, and no, this is not real, so don't try to pop this box. So I've scrubbed it, but you can see that the source host name on this particular domain is labeled as such. Now the next thing that we look at, and this is where you want to start getting yourself acquainted with protocols. Our students at Marshall are like, I don't know why I have to take protocols. Why do we have to take an admin and protocols course? Well, mostly I want you to know that if you're looking at SSH traffic, what port is that coming from? And if you're looking at an FTP traffic, which, if I'm looking at a business where, somebody's uploading massive, documents to an FTP server, what does that look like on a packet end? So you want to know, how port numbers go back to certain services. In this case, SSH is port 20, looking at a source port number 22. Also, you're looking on the second part of that packet of looking at the destination host name. You have to have somewhere this packet's going to go, or else it just breaks down. It's not going to go anywhere. So you're going to have your source host name, and then you're going to have your destination host name. So we have to be able to legibly read that, and that's what Wireshark's going to do that for us. You also have tagged on to the end of that a destination port number. That destination port number is going to show what port on that destination is this going to feed into. Also, there's a lot of stuff here on the TCP specific information. We're going to get a little bit deeper into TCP and UDP and how to break down that traffic a little bit later on. But we'll save that for a little bit later. Keep in mind that for different packet types, this is an SSH packet. So this is basically me logging into my SSH server. This is what this looks like. HTTP traffic looks a little bit different. So HTTP traffic looks different than FTP traffic. FTP traffic looks a little bit different than NetBIOS traffic. So little nuggets of traffic will give different types of information. Now, the similar packet dump from T-Shark looks primarily the same, except you have sometimes some acknowledgement commands that are in there. So it shows whether it's going up, or it's an upstream or a downstream. So we're going to examine that a little bit in a little bit detail as well. Also, some of the services, which is really not important in this section, but at least we want to see how this stuff runs. So As far as running it on a machine, keep in mind that TCP-dump is a Linux-based program. That being said, because it's a Linux-based program, I'm going to run it in CIF today. So I'm going to start to set up my CIF session for you and how exactly to start capturing packets. So if you're a Windows user, you can download WinDump. WinDump is okay. If you're installing Wireshark on Windows, it's okay. It installs default into Wireshark and Windows. But it's Windows, I'm like, it just doesn't. It's not the same. Let's just put it that way. It's sometimes just hard. It's not intuitive. I normally do not recommend running WinDump on its own, but it does work and it does do a fairly good job. And you're going to get the same output. So if you're just diehard Windows and you want to stick with it, stick with it. But you'll find probably the common theme here in every session is Linux is sometimes just easier to work with certain stuff. And in this case, it really, really, really is. So one of the things I want to go ahead is I'm going to just get the part out of the way where it's most important. We've got to insert ourselves into the physical layer. Now, the physical layer is going to be whatever we need to put ourselves into the network. So the whole first things first of it sounds like some kind of like Kanye West song there or something. It's like that Nicki Minaj, Kanye West, and Monster. I guess maybe it's just me. I get songs stuck in my head when I'm teaching. I try to purge them out. Get out of there. So first thing we need to do is we need to snip the traffic off the network. And there's a couple of ways to do that. We can either go on the wire, which we can insert ourselves into the actual physical switch of the network, or we can go through the air. So there's a couple of ways to do that. So one of the things I always recommend is to find the best way into the network and what traffic you need to capture. So say if you need to capture traffic of the entire network, then you need to look at the design of the network and put yourself into the core switch. If you need a segment of that network, look for segmentation of that network and then insert yourself in that particular segment to get that particular traffic. So don't make it hard on yourself. A couple of things that I recommend picking up. I have a couple of these, but I'll pass them around so you guys can take a look at it. This is what I call a throwing star, a land star. Hack5 sells these. They're a little pricey. They're about $40. You can get one for 10. It's an actual throwing star land tap. You have to solder them up, but the Pro actually comes pre-hooked in. You can see it has 4 ports all the way around. And what you basically do is you just tap into your LAN now. Now keep in mind that this throttles your network connection down to 10 megabits. So if you want to covertly put yourself in the network, and just tap into the LAN, whoever's using, this particular port here is probably going to see some significant traffic decrease. But you can, inject yourself into the network by something like that, and it's real easy to do. So that's one way of doing it. I use that quite frequently in classes, any kind of engagements or anything where I need to capture traffic, and I don't need to do it for a long period of time. I can just basically tap into that. Another drawback to those, if you look on the actual, you see a two-way traffic here, you also have one-way traffic there as well. So you can capture up traffic only, or you can capture downstream traffic only. So if it's downstream, what you're interested in, pop into the downstream, capture that downstream. But this is kind of cool. Another thing that I would highly recommend as well is picking up a card that you can capture wireless traffic on. And using Linux, probably some of you guys have messed with these before, Alpha cards. This is an older Alpha card. I didn't bring the newer one. But Alpha has a whole line of cards, $20, $50, depending on what signal range you want, what type of antenna you pick up with it. I just have just a wireless antenna that's plugged into this. I can clip this on the back. There's a ton of different combinations. as long as you stick with a Raylink or an Atheros chipset in these cards, they normally automatically install and they run in Kali or SIFT. I've never had any issues of Alpha cards not installing their drivers or not having drivers available for Kali and SIFT. If you get kind of out of that chipset, those two, you'll have some issues. So this is the Alpha card, and I'll show you how to set these up here shortly. You know, it has a USB interface on it. Very, very, very easy setup there. And the PowerPoint that I gave you, I did provide the links to those, so you can kind of get a good look at if you're interested in you know, moving forward with this. What kind of equipment you may need to pick up. You can also get some of the Hack 5 stuff. Hack 5 has Wi-Fi Pineapple. You have you know, land turtles. You can. There's all different types of utilities you can pick up to do this kind of stuff. As long as you can get a shell. You know, that's my mantra. And tell the guys or the folks at Marshall, if you can get a shell, then you can get a packet capture. Technically. Not always true, because you may be able to get a shell and you may, you know, have issues of getting stuff to install because you don't have proxies. But you know, as long as you know how to work within the terminal and get packet captures, then you can kind of, you know, save your own butt down the road. If you're one of those folks that want to just run Wireshark, then you know, you're going to have some issues. So one of the things I'm going to stop right here and do, because I'm going to start getting into the menu part, is I'm going to set up SIFT. So this is the part where I'm going to sit down, and I'm actually going to go towards the keyboard here. And I'm going to go ahead and pre-configure SIFT to... so I grab the SIFT download, and you can see the SIFT download is usually, it's about 5 files. You can pick that up at the... go to SANS Digital Forensics. So if you type in SANS SIFT from Google, I downloaded it earlier just on the wireless connection. I picked it up in about 4 minutes. So 2 gig download, not very big. It comes in a virtual machine. So it's an open virtual machine format. So it's an OVF format. So you're going to have to do some extra stuff with it. Now I'm running from a Mac, but you can run this through VMware Workstation or VMware Player for Windows. I'm going to run it through VMware Fusion, so I'm going to go ahead and set up the virtual machine. So I got to go back to my virtual machine library, and I'm going to import that particular distro in. So if you're importing, that's going to be an option in any virtual machine, and you're going to import that .ovf file in because, you know, it's made for multiple virtual machines. So I'm just going to go ahead and import that virtual machine in and walk through the hoops that it wants me to go through. So I'm probably going to make a new folder for this. I'm going to call it SIFT 2016. So I'm just going to save all of this to a folder. I'm going to import that in. And it might take a couple of minutes to do, but and if you're coming back tomorrow, you know, this is something that, you know, you can kind of get a little bit of practice on today. I'd strongly recommend, if you're going to sit in on my network forensics talk tomorrow, to come in with Kali or SIFT right away. Take a couple of seconds to do this. Maybe. I always say, I believe 50% of my career was spent waiting or making things work. It's a very truthful statement, but we'll get it to boot up here and then we'll move forward. Give it time to unpack that video. The nice thing about SANs, a lot of people ask, what's the difference between SIFT and Kali? Kali is more along the lines of a Debian OS, which is just different looking. SIFT, on the other hand, is just a souped-up version of Ubuntu. Either one works well. I think you could get by in either one. I'm just going to go ahead, because this is what I teach a lot off of at Marshall. I'll just stick with SIFT. So, sure, we'll upgrade it. Let it do its boot. Go into full screen mode. It'll do its thing. The default password for SIFT is just forensics. It comes with its preloaded password, sans forensics. The default password is forensics. I'm not going to change that, so don't try to reverse shell me or pop my box. Stay with the gentleman's code here, strictly for educational purposes. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change my preferences here so you can actually see what I'm doing, where it doesn't look like ants here. So I'm going to change my colors to a bright green. I think there's a, green on black, more hacker-esque, right? And then I'm going to change my font, make it a little bit bigger as well. So I'll probably go up to about 25. You guys see that back there? Does that look okay? Should. I also put a bunch of cheat sheets in there for SIFT, Wireshark, and TCP dump. You'll find some of those cheat sheets actually on the screen that's pre-built into SIFT. Since I'm not going to be using any of these today, I'm just going to go ahead and trash these. So I would recommend saving them, but I don't want you to have to stare at them. Another thing that drives me nuts, and I'm going to do here real quick, is I'm going to try to go out of full screen and see if I can get my wallpaper back. That wallpaper doesn't scale well. Well, we'll be working the terminal here. So, wireless card floating around there anywhere? Did I make it back up to the front? So, a couple of things we want to do initially is setting up your environment to do packet capturing. So I'm going to go ahead and run an ifconfig just to see what the config of this machine is. Now, beware that Linux is notorious, and I think Kali just did this, and Ubuntu just did. They changed ETH0 to something really wonky name now. I don't know if you guys have ran into that. It's no longer ETH0, and I'm just like, why did you do that? It's the same, it's the Windows philosophy. Let's change File Explorer to like File Explorer Pro or something. Something, it's very Windows-like. But normally on older Linux distros, and this one, it's ETH0 for your actual physical connection. I'm going to go ahead and plug my wireless connection. That way you can see that as well. See, you can get a look of what ifconfig reports back and how would I capture on wireless traffic. So I shouldn't have to install these drivers manually. It should automatically take. And it looks like, it's going to. Now, if you're working in a terminal, you may have to bring these in. You will have to bring those in manually. I'm going to run this again and see if it should come in as a WLAN 0. Yeah, and it comes in, my wireless card comes in the WLAN 0, which, if I'm going to capture on this particular card, if I'm going to capture wireless traffic, I have to point TCP dump to WLAN 0. But before I can do that, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my card to capture in promiscuous mode. So the reason that you would want to set up your card in promiscuous mode is that it will accept packets even if it's not addressed to that specific adapter. So what you may run into, if your card is not in promiscuous mode, it will drop packets and not be able to capture. It's real easy to set up. So I'm going to point ifconfig, and I'm going to, and I gave you the command to do that. Probably should run that as sudo. So sudo ifconfig eth0. So let me get back here. You just go ahead and put a sudo, so a super user. ifconfig eth0, and we'll do promisc. And it'll prompt me for my password. And it looks like I fat fingered my password. Did I fat finger it again? I'm going to have to chicken peck it out. It's been a long day. Okay, so it didn't give me any prompt because I didn't do anything verbose, but I'm going to check ifconfig again. And now you'll see up here at the top in for ETH0, you can see there on the up broadcast, it is now running in promiscuous multicast mode. So if I'm wanting to run in promiscuous, that's the command that I run. If I want to take it out of promiscuous, I just put a minus in front of that particular adapter, and it'll take it out. And we'll run ifconfig again. You'll see the difference there. It'll take out the permisc out of multicast. So that's how you can take it in and out of promiscuous mode. Real easy way to do that. I'll show you in Wireshark a little bit easier way to manage that. Okay, so I have my card, or at least ETH0. My physical connection is in promiscuous mode now. So I'm ready to start capturing. So what I'm going to do here is after I've set into promiscuous mode, there we go. So after I've set into promiscuous mode, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start the first run of TCP dump. So my command there is going to be, I'm going to run it as super user. I'm not going to elevate through just because of the way SIP operates. So best practices, I'll sudo everything out. But I'll run TCP dump with an interface option, a -i. So that stands for interface, and I'm going to point it towards ETH0. And I'm just going to watch the output as it runs. So going back into SIFT here, I'm going to type in sudo. Let's clear our screen out there so we can see that. For whatever reason, that whole, let's swap the displays here. There we go. PowerPoint's being crazy. It's doing that whole display grabbing. I was afraid it would do that. Now you guys can see what I'm not seeing. I may have to go through. It's in that infinite loop of wanting to. Did I swap my display? Alright, so let's swap displays there again. My apologies, I'm trying too much here. I'm usually running two computers when I'm doing this, so for valid reason. Let's say in show. What I might do is keep it out of slideshow mode. That way you guys can still see it, but you'll be able to shift with me. It's better to go back and forth than it is to go through the PowerPoint and then try to remember and regurgitate this. So I'm going to clear it again. So I'm going to run a sudo this time. I'm going to run TCP dump. I'm going to point it to the interface of ETH0, and I'm just going to start a packet capture. So it'll start to listen on ETH0, and you can see there's already some chatter that's starting to pick up. And I'm doing nothing on the network. So nothing but just letting it do its thing. So there's some stuff on the physical machine that's going to be probably chattering back and forth because I'm running it through a VM. But you can see this is getting pretty heavy very quickly, and this is all outputting verbose to screen. So you can see already, just in a couple of minutes, I have a lot of traffic to go through. So I'm going to Control-Z that. So this is really not the best way of going about capturing traffic straight to screen. So let's work with filters this time. So at this point, we want to set up what I call a capture filter. So capture filter, and this time I'm going to set up TCP dump to only capture UDP. What's UDP? What's the function of UDP?
Send it and forget it.
Send and forget it. Good answer. So I'm just going to set up a UDP filter. I need to set up my interface. So I can either put quotes around it or not, but I'm just going to go ahead and turn it loose. And you can see here that it's not chattering nearly as much because it's waiting on UDP packets to come through the network before it starts. So I'm going to go ahead and start up Firefox. And you'll see when I start up Firefox, it'll start to pick up some traffic from DNS. So it'll pick up some DNS entries where it's going back to SAN's webpage. If I go out to google.com, it's going to pick that traffic up as well. So you can see the DNS resolves of Google and SAN's picking up on the page. But it's still pretty heavy traffic. So sometimes just a simple capture filter is not going to cut it with us. I can also, just for the new beginners in the room, I could also do not just UDP, I can do just about any protocol that I wish to do. So I can do straight up TCP traffic, so I can capture TCP traffic in that as well. I can also, if I'm looking for SSH sessions, I can do SSH, and well, I'll have to do a little bit extra stuff for SSH, but I'll show you where to find the filters there. For you guys that are interested in SSH monitoring, I had a brain fart there for a second. So kind of, looking at the high-level protocols you can capture based upon that. But really, pre-capture filters, think about it, it's kind of like capturing data, and if you don't get it, let's just say we have an attacker in our network that's going to be in for a limited time. If you don't get that traffic while that attacker's in the network and you filtered it out pre-capture, you're not going to have the luxury to go back and get that again. It's a one-time offer. It's kind of like, one of those things that only come around, once every so often. So keep in mind, pre-capture filters capture that out in the capturing process. We can't go back and set those like we can post-capture filters. Another thing we can do as well is we can set port filters on that as well. So I could copy out Mac here. So let's go back into SIFT. So I can do a UDP port 53. So I'm capturing on UDP now and only capturing traffic out on port 53. You guys know port 53 traffic, gave it away in there. That's any DNS request. So any DNS requests that come back to your network, I could limit out, because UDP can get kind of busy. So if you just want to see, DNS traffic, you can limit out port 53 that way. You can also limit out for a UDP source port 53, or you can source or destination port. So there's a lot of different ways we can capture that traffic. So you're not limited to any specific capture filter in regards to that. Most of the time, what you run will normally work. So I can run destination and source ports as well to look at my up and down traffic. So let's just say the problem with TCP dump, though, is, I'm capturing the screen. Oh, I did that again. I shouldn't have full screened that. When I go into slideshow mode up here, it puts that secondary screen, and I didn't have time to fix it. But another thing that I can do as well, before I save this to file, is I can also capture packets destined to a particular domain. So let's say, for example, I go back into SIFT here, clear this out. if I want to capture, let's say, let's just recall that. So I want to capture on ETH0, and I only want to capture against DST. Let's do a DST host. And I'm going to do forensics.marshall.edu. I'll show you what happens here. So it's going to set and listen on ETH0. So if I start up a browser and I do a couple of search for Marshall, it's not going to capture any of that traffic. So if any traffic was being captured, it would output to screen. But watch what happens as soon as I go to forensics.marshall.edu. It's going to light up like a Christmas tree. So that means that the filter is only going to capture the information from that specific domain. So let's say we have a culprit in our network where we know that some player or there's traffic that's being uploaded to this specific file server. I can point my capture filters to that server. I always recommend that there was a particular friend of mine who worked DFIR at a company. Really large company, 50,000 employees, and one of the major concerns that they had was proprietary files, trademark secrets, all of that stuff getting uploaded when people left the company. Because people would get headhunted out of this company, they would leave, and this is one of those medical device companies. Really, you're looking at $1 million secrets here, and people would just upload those like candy into FTP servers, Dropbox servers. So they would look at traffic on specific places in that network to see if anyone was uploading those kind of files. And they were having very, very good success of finding the major players in those kinds of networks. So I can pivot around this network and visit links there, and you can see that the traffic should, if I go back home there, it's kind of lighting up on screen there, but it just keeps going and going and going. So go ahead and kill that off. You can kind of get an idea of setting up towards specific domains and destination. I can also set up take out the destination host, so any up or down traffic going to forensics.marshall.edu would save. Now, one thing that I'm going to do, though, is, let's cut them off there. Let me figure that out. So if I want to capture traffic, and let's just say that I want to capture traffic to a file. So I want to save a packet capture file. So let's just say I want to capture everything on ETH0. I can set a W output there. So the next thing I'm just going to go through is actually how to save the file. So you guys bear with me if you've been through this before. I'm just going to call this output.pcap. And what that's going to do, it's going to start listening, but it's going to save that to a PCAP file. So I can go and, browse online, if I want to run SSH or, go out. I'm just generating and chattering HTTP traffic right now from the browser. But if I stop that, and I actually do a Control-C, you can see that I captured 5,685 packets by that filter. Where did those packets go? They didn't go back to screen. No, they're back under my home directory. So if I do an ls, you can see that the output.pcap was saved in my home directory. So you can call whatever you want. I called it output.pcap. As long as you set that -w option, you're going to have an output in your PCAP. You're going to have a PCAP that you can now import into Wireshark and do an additional analysis on. So that's kind of a useful thing. The reason that I push TCP dump for packet capturing is that you can easily deploy these on Raspberry Pis. So let's just, Wireshark on a Raspberry Pi is very, very taxing to memory. And the reason being is Wireshark takes a lot of resources and a lot of overhead just to operate. So if you're running it on a Raspberry Pi or something along those lines, it's going to take a lot of power, a lot of buffer, and a lot of memory to keep that up and running. So it's going to slow down your system considerably. It's a lot easier to deploy a Raspberry Pi in your network, plug it in, let it run for a couple hours, pull it out of the network, get your packet capture, and then bring it into Wireshark and look at it afterwards. So if you're wondering how to write filters for these, this is another good option that you can go to look at capture filters. So I'm giving you that option. It's man pcap-filter. So all I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back in and just run man pcap-filter. And that's going to pull the man page for the manual page for PCAP filters. So we're able to go in and look and see what those filters look like. So I can set where I can filter out based upon MAC addresses, Ethernet destinations, gateways. I mean, the sky's the limit here. And that's, a lot of people don't like to go to TCP dump because they think they're limited on options. They're really not. If you know these options and know where to go to find them, you really have a lot of power at your hands running TCP dump. A lot of people disagree with that statement, but they don't know. So now let's get into Wireshark. So Wireshark is basically, it is a packet sniffing tool. So it does do what TCP dump does, except it is also a protocol analyzer on top of that. So it is a graphical interface in regards to giving you the ability to analyze certain protocols. It's open source, so it's free. That's always a plus as well. Anything open source works well. And it used to be called Ethereal. How many of you guys remember when it was called Ethereal? You oldies around here? Yeah, I remember when I first started in college and was messing around. What? Oh, it was long ago. Yeah, that's what makes you feel old. It's like, it's Ethereal. No, it was like, 10 years ago? At least. Maybe even more. I remember probably 2007. Yeah, so we could sit around and talk about the good old days of Ethereal. That's back when. But it basically, that's what we changed into. So as far as, let me just full screen this. As far as working and, blank screen. And I've already explained what T-Shark is, and I spent a lot of time on these graphics, as you can tell, to tell the difference. It's basically the same beer in a different can. All T-Shark is command line based version of Wireshark, and it's CLI based, command line based. If you are running it, it's one of those, if you're more comfortable with Wireshark, deploy that in a command line environment. Now let's get to the actual interface. So when you start up Wireshark, this is what you're going to see, and especially in version 2. So in version 2, they've changed the interface to now you can set a capture filter right at the home, basically on the home screen. You can start setting capture filters. This is why I recommend, just if you're having breach events or anything like that, just capture the raw traffic and then set a capture filter in Wireshark to distill the traffic down. You can also see, I don't know if you see those little lines there, but it will also show you what kind of chatter you have on your interfaces. So in this case, ETH0 and your loopback actually has some chatter on it, but you can see by those little up and down lines that you do have traffic on that particular filter. If you open up a packet capture file, you're going to see 4 sections that's opened up, from top to bottom. Now, one thing I want to point out here that's missing from this screen to this screen is we're missing a menu file. So I'm going to go back to Wireshark real quick, and I'm just going to go ahead and start up Wireshark. So you guys have the PowerPoint so you can follow along with me. But I should close that out. So right now, if you run SIFT and you start up Wireshark, what's going to happen is it's going to start up, but you're looking at version 1. So bear with me here. I got to end the slideshow and go back and forth. So I'll probably stick in the... Takes a couple of seconds to end. I'll probably just end up going to the PowerPoint. But you can see in version 1 here, the look is a little bit different. And by default, they put this over in the menu, but you can see here, I have no interfaces to capture on. This is because I'm not running Wireshark as an admin, so I'm not sudoing Wireshark. Also, I'm running 1.10.6, which is the pre-build into SIFT. So we're going to update this real quick. So the easiest way to update SIFT is I'm just going to fire up a terminal. I'm going to run an apt get. I'm just going to do a quick update. So yeah, it's going to ask if I'm root, so I need to run as sudo, and I'm going to do an apt get update. And I'm just going to go ahead and install my packages. Now, in order to upgrade to version 2, I first have to apply the Ubuntu updates. And it looks like it took everything, downloaded it fairly quickly. So now I'm going to do an apt get.
Sudo?
Sudo, yeah. Always go against my own best practices here. I'm trying to sudo apt get install. We'll do a Wireshark. I'm going to do a Qt version. So it should build and install that package. And it should update our icon over there on the left as well. So it should automatically take the update and be done with it. You can certainly run Wireshark in version 1. I'm not going to limit you from doing that, but hopefully it will. Say in a minute, but I got it to take like 20 seconds, but traffic's a little bit heavier there. So while that's running, I'm going to go back over here, and I'm going to go back to the interface here. So the next thing you're going to see if you fire up the interface is this specific interface here. So you're going to see your command menus. If you don't see your command menus, chances are in Linux you're not running as a super user. So if you run as a super user, it'll show you the menus. So that's a good telltale way to determine whether or not you're running as a super user or non-super user. Also, the second thing that you'll see with an open packet is display filters. Now, we're going to get into display filters here shortly and why display filters are really, really important. So what I might do is once we get to the point of getting that installed, we may take a quick break, let you guys grab do a bathroom break, or I can go through the PowerPoints. We might just go back. But we will take a break in there, never fear. You also have a listing of captured packets. Normally they are listed in the order in which they were received by the packet capture. So depending on the order number of the way the packets came in, we'll go verify that a little bit later on, but we're also going to kind of break that down in the order the packets came in. You have source and destination ports, the protocol in which it came in, the length of the packet, and a little bit of background info on the packet. Down here is a breakdown of the packet header. Now, if you guys have ever studied packets before, you have packet header and then you have packet payload, which is the actual part of the file that we may want to carve out. You also have packet header, which is the IP, the protocol that it's being sent, the time that it was sent. All of that is translated up here. But there's really kind of cool stuff down here that we'll take a look at as well. And then down here, what I call packet content, it lists out in hexadecimal and ASCII. So, that's the actual payload of the packet there. So we would have to reconstruct those if we're wanting to do a full file download. So I'm going to go back to SIFT and see if we finished up our download just yet. It looks like we did. So I'm going to clear that out. Now I'm just going to run, let's just run sudo Wireshark. I'm going to run it directly from terminal. And it looks like it fired up. It's going to say, hey, you're running it, and it's going to disable the do file. Not a big problem. It'll spit that back out. But you can see now we're looking at a version 2 interface, which is a little bit more ideal. You can see that our interface is fired up there. And we do have the ability to set a capture filter. I'll just show you real quick. If I run that as a non-admin, see the difference there? I'm missing my menu file. That's just something, a little nuance that you kind of want to avoid. So if you run Wireshark as a super user, you can go ahead and see the menu within the program itself. So something I wanted to point out. Now, Another thing that I need to do, and it's probably befitting, it's about 10 after 3. Let's go ahead and take a quick bathroom break. If you guys want to or need to, I'm going to grab the packet files and I'm going to go ahead and copy them over into Wireshark so we can have some data to actually open up. So let's take it's 6 minutes after 3. Since we're going to split this into 2 sections, we'll take about 5 and then we'll get back at it again.
Should I leave this recording? Where'd you go? Talk to Bill?
Yeah, I'm going to go. That's when I have to stop. I have to control Bill real quick. So
Hopefully that was recorded.
I hope so. I hope that it's recorded. I look directly at the camera.
Just make sure you speak up.
Speak up. I'm going to go troll Bill now. Oh, the things we do. These are too much. Let's see. I need to copy this thing. This is the bad part about going at the end of the day, especially with Wireshark. Awesome. I think I can just grab them here real quick. They're not very big.
It's only like 47 minutes.
Yeah, it's really small. So, it's
Alright,
set
yeah.
up.
What, real trust the USB drive?
No.
You run a local, you notice that. Oh, you get Wi-Fi. Yeah, you're on this.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave this up real quick. Then. Oh, you just lay it there on the table. Oh,
That's safe.
oh, okay. Connection all throttled out. What's up with it? I'll let it run. Alright, let's go down there.
I don't know what I was about.
So I went down to Troll Bill Gardner's talk, because that's what I do to him all the time. He's giving a talk on making him a professional of professionals. And I was going to walk into his session. He had a Diet Coke on the table, just take a drink of it and walk back out. So I'm going to walk back in to the room where he's giving the presentation. He puts his hand up, and knocks his Diet Coke over on the podium beside his computer in the middle of his presentation. So he's like, "Give me a towel." So I go out and get a towel. Somebody brings in the towel while I'm going to the bathroom with this towel. So I walk back in and interrupt his presentation again just to give him the towel. For a presentation, he's supposed to be more professional. So he's not going to be happy with me at the end of the day. Which
There's one earlier, since he was live, he said all his students kept sending him career checks, and he had to take off his watch because his watch
when he went to HackerCon last year, our offices were right beside each other. I always do something. So I like put like something like I'm out for like calf surgery or like implant surgery or something. Well, this year I put a sock on his door, like old dorm, crusty sock, that you would do in college. So he has a sock hanging on his door right now, down at the prestigious university. Download this real quick. Three finger swipe. They go back and forth.
So if you
Yeah.
swipe sideways, it swipes between your spaces. That might be easy.
That-
Swipe between
yeah.
your slides and the disk drive.
True.
Just a suggestion.
Let me try that and see. Let's see if that will actually work. It's, don't need that anymore.
So you just start up your slides, and that'll have, I think it'll probably make it another space.
Killing me here was
Yeah, that'd be another space.
Yeah, I think it makes it another space. So as soon as it comes up,
there we go.
so there's your, so swipe
Okay.
that
So,
way, and there's your slides.
okay, sweet. It's good to know. This is why I come to these. I've learned things. It's a bad thing about being in academia. You become progressively stupider every year because you're out of the field. So you have to, I'm 4 years out, you will just stay on now. Get back.
Does that swipe work?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like on your screen or
Oh, it works on my
your
screen.
presenter?
I need to.
You're in presenter mode.
Yeah, I'm in that presenter mode. Yeah, presenter mode. There's a screen mirror mode in Mac, but I can't remember how to.
That's it. That way you've got something there.
I can do slideshow.
Oh yeah,
If I do
that'll
slideshow,
do it. That'll do it.
I think it'll.
Now,
Okay, so. Oh, no, it's like it takes use slideshow. Maybe that's it. There it goes. Look at that. Bam. Had to take it out of that. I'm not a big fan of presenter mode. Use that notes anyway. Let's see. Go. I gotta. Wireshark. May or may not, for time's sake, actually go back to the menus. I may dive through this. There's some stuff that I didn't put in the presentation that might help you out. One of the things about Wireshark, when you open up a packet capture, and I gave you this packet capture. It's the evidence packet analysis that is in that particular folder. So you can see the file name up there at the top, and then all the screenshots that I've given you are at the bottom. That way I can try to mitigate as much as I can of switching back and forth. But as far as the status bar is concerned, that's a really important place, and I'm going to go ahead and get kicking back into this again, because I think I'm going to try to target being done by like 4 o'clock, maybe a little after 4. I know we're supposed to go until 5, but I'm probably getting glazed over. Everyone wants to start dinner at this time, so as far as the status bar is concerned, it will tell you what the frame length is at the bottom. It will also show you the total number of packets that's at the top and bottom as well. So you can see that, how long did it take to load, how many packets, if you filtered them out in this case. If you see 100%, that means 100% of your packets are showing up. The goal is to try to whittle that down into smaller numbers, at least from a forensic perspective is concerned. Now, as far as capture options is concerned, you can go to capture and you can go to selected interfaces, and you can see there that if you click the checkbox, you can put all of your interfaces into promiscuous mode. It will automatically take care of that command and switch option for you, so you don't have to go in like you do TCP dump and switch those things on and off like you normally do. I've noticed though that sometimes if you're not running as a non-super user, it will not switch over those into promiscuous mode. So just kind of a disclaimer there, just because it has the button doesn't necessarily mean it'll switch those over for you. And any interface that it happens to read on that specific interface, it will capture for you. So, a couple of capture filter examples. So, if I run a capture filter, let's just say of forensics.marshall.edu, it will filter out all that specific traffic there, that happens to be in this packet capture. So what I'm going to do is I am going to open up this packet capture for you. That way you can kind of see. Just go ahead and open up the example. So let's say I have an IP of interest here, and the IP of interest, it's cutting off my packets here a little bit, so I need to scale this up. Always fight with Linux to try to make things show up. It's still cutting off my... It's all those little things. See? Right there. There we go. So now you can see that in this particular capture I have about 873 packets. There's 873 packets displayed, which is 100%. Now, let's just say in this case that the first capture, this should be all TCP, HTTP traffic with a little bit of DNS scattered. So let's say that I want to limit my traffic down to just DNS traffic. So let's say if I type in DNS, I can quickly filter that out and only look at the DNS queries in that particular capture. So let's say here I can look and see what DNS requests were made, by whom, and what sites. I can quickly determine, hey, it looks like there's been some DNS queries out to Facebook.com. You can see the first one there. So this is coming from a 192.168.0.100. So not only can I carve out based upon services, I can also carve out based upon IP addresses. An easy way to do that is I can either set an IP filter, which in this case is an IP.addr double equals whatever your IP address is. So in this case I'm going to do a 0.100, which will limit my 1.100, doesn't it? And if I need to clear that out, I can clear that out. It's 192.168.0.100. Okay. 2.168. So if I set that filter there, it will limit out that traffic. You can see that 841 of the 873 packets have that particular IP address. So that doesn't help me a whole lot. So this is really taking a one needle out of a stack of needles, basically. So let's say that I want to be a little more granular. I only want to look at the ports that are going, or look at the traffic that is going up. So in this case, I can either just type it in, or I can build an expression for this. So I'm going to look at the expression filters, and I'm going to go down, and I'm going to look at IP. Sometimes RAM gets a little dark. It takes a while to populate these filters in the Linux version of Wireshark. It puts so many in there. So if it panics there for a second, don't fear, it'll come back. So just say here that I want to carve out IP version 4 traffic. So I have all of these different options that I can set. But let's just say I want my IP source to be 192.168.0.100. So I'm going to go down there and find IP.source. I can either set to either is present, equals, greater than or less than, greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and set an IP.source, which is the source IP address, double equals 192.168.0.100. So I can either search out the filter there. In this case, I put it in the wrong spot. Should put it over here in the IP version 4 address. So it automatically populates the filter for me. If I select any of those options, it will populate that filter for me. So I can either copy it from here, or I can click OK and insert that filter. Now keep in mind, though, I already had a filter populated there. I can compound filters, but if it's red, it's usually not a good filter. It's not a proper filter. So in this case, I have an IP source. If I click the right arrow, it limits down my traffic now to 365 packets. So I have 41.8% of my packets going upstream from that IP address now. So that helps me out a little bit to determine, okay, this is the IP address. But the problem with IP addresses, especially with attribution and with bigger networks, what happens in bigger networks with IP addresses? They recycle, they reuse. DHCP can reuse an IP address. So it's not always a good idea to try to attribute a problem specific to IP addresses. So there's a couple of ways we can look at this. So I'm going to look now, and I'm going to start diving into the header information. So I can look down into the frame, and a couple of things I can look at is I can look at the time that these packets came in. So if I'm doing a timeline investigation, I can look and see what the arrival time is. But let's just say I don't want to dig into the frame of every single packet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to Edit, and I'm going to go to Preferences real quick. And for my columns, I'm going to take out the time format, and I'm going to add in a new column that basically will show my time, my UTC time that the packet came in. So I can set that as well. Let's see. Let's do UTC date, year. Yeah, this will work. So if I set that, it's going to be called new column. So I want to call it UTC time. And now I have a new column. I can drag that up. I can put that right after my number. So now I have a new column that's in play that shows exactly when the date and time came in. That's a little more useful to me to show when packets came in. So now I have the number of the packet, UTC time, and the source and destination IP. So I have a filter set here. And now I have a destination IP. I have info on those packets. You can see one thing that they added in version 2 that's kind of cool is you can limit out what kind of traffic you're looking at here. So anything green there is usually HTTP traffic. They're color rules. So if I want to go down and look and see what that little black swatch of traffic is, I can go down specifically to that section there and see that that's looks like a send at command there. It's a duplicate acknowledgement, so probably dropped a packet there, and we re-requested it. Common problem in certain networks. But you can see this is what we're up against. If I'm looking at a more diverse traffic, those color rules are going to be a little bit different. So what are the color rules? Well, let's go up to Edit menu, and let's go to Preferences again. And I'm going to see what those fonts and colors, and you can see now based under the filter expressions, protocols, you can see actually what color your expressions are. Where are we at? There we are. So we'll get back into this a little bit further here shortly, because I'm going to go back into the settings again. I just want to show you how to set up your interface to show exactly a little more focused traffic. So Another thing that I can do as well is I can also set what we call a compound filter. So a compound filter means that I can set not only one of these filters here, but I can also set an Ethernet or a MAC address on top of that as well. So, I'm trying to learn how to swipe here. So let's say under 192.168.0.100, if I drag down into outside of the frame, if I get down into Ethernet, I see here that I have a source and destination. It looks like this was filtering through a D-Link router. So I can either filter out based on the D-Link router, or I can focus in on this MAC address right here. So I don't like the fact that it resolves to actually show what the MAC addresses are. That's a preference of mine. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to preferences again. And let's see if I can find the statistics. It's in there somewhere. If I unclick Resolve MAC addresses, it will only show me the MAC addresses now. So that's a little nuance. I would rather, to be honest, look up the MAC address through another service than just to have the MAC address concatenated to me. So Wireshark has an online service through internet. It's if you type in, just do a simple Google search on Wireshark OUI. They have their own web page that will resolve these for you. So let's say if I have a MAC address on my network, I'm not sure what type of device that it is, but let's just say I know that it starts with 0021. So I can type in 0021 and do a find for that. Let's see what my results are. So there's a lot of different results, so I need to get a little more granular with, I'll copy the entire MAC address, go back into the browser. Let's copy that whole. I copied the IP address. For sure. Value. Hopefully that'll cover it. I need some caffeine or something today. That swipe is killing me. Didn't even need to leave out of there. So if I do a find on that one, you can see now that resolves back to D-Link Corporation. So I can do MAC address lookups and attribute what type of device it is. So if you have a person, let's say in a wireless network, if your culprit is running an iPhone, if they're running a Dell laptop, at least you can distill down what type of manufacturer that your particular attacker is using. Back at the university, we had an issue where a student was just absolutely dinging on our road dead. And one of the things that they did is they knew that they were coming in at a specific access point. So I was like, well, just do a MAC address lookup and see what type of device it is. And it was very, very specific. It was an Android device, but it was an HTC Android device that happened to be a tablet. So the easiest way is to go out and look for your attacker. If they're live in the network, look for the person holding the tablet that's HTC, right? There's your attacker. So physically you can attribute if you know exactly what you're looking for. So you can copy these values out and search them, or you can turn them on and resolve them in Wireshark as well. Another thing that we can do here, let's just say our source MAC address, just to make sure that we're attributing the right kind of attacker here, I can right-click that and I can apply as a filter. So I can pick any of these fields here, pretty much anywhere in Wireshark, and apply that as a filter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick that source Ethernet address, I'm going to right-click it, and I'm going to apply as a filter. Now, if I do it as selected, what's going to happen is it's going to overwrite my IP source filter. So I'm going to do an AND selected, and what that's going to do is that's going to compound that filter for me and only show the traffic that is coming from that MAC address from that IP. So tomorrow we'll get a little bit deeper into that when we're searching and doing more network forensics. But in this case, it really didn't limit out any of our traffic because I was doing it from the same thing. If I want to get more granular with this, another thing that I can do is jump down here, and HTTP packets are notorious about this as well. So down here at the bottom, I can look in TCP, and hopefully it's in there somewhere. Let's jump up to it. Let's find an HTTP packet. So just find a random HTTP packet with that filter set. You guys are following me. Or, if I look in there, I can see somewhere, where are you at? Under HTTP, sorry. Under HTTP, there's what we call a user agent in there. You guys know what a user agent is? What's a user agent?
It's a little like string of like text that gives like the web server details of like what the client is.
Yeah. So what browsers do, a lot of web services do, is they will attach a user agent to their whatever they're running. So say, for example, web crawling utilities. You guys have heard of robots.txt, right? What robots.txt did, their bread and butter, was to block certain user agents from crawling your website. That's why everyone put the robots file in there. So what a lot of web crawlers did is they changed their browser user agent to look like something else. If you ever use like HTTrack or anything like that to capture traffic, you can change your user agent over. But long story short, browsers will attach a user agent to the browser for every packet sent over an HTTP packet. So what you can do is you can attribute a browser to a packet. And this is a really key element here, because if I have a user who is using Mozilla Firefox version 33, they're going to have a different user agent than a person using Microsoft Internet Explorer 7 or Edge. Edge has a completely different browser user agent. So basically what we can do is we can also filter out for user agent as well. This is a common mistake that my students, do I have any network forensics folks? Blake, you've had network forensics. You've had to work with user agents before. They all say Mozilla, right? So a lot of people are like, yeah, they were using a Mozilla browser. And I was like, no, go out and Google search this, figure out what browser. They're all different. But I could also apply that as a filter as well and do an and selected and just keep compounding that filter. And now, whoa, hang on a second here. I have now limited my traffic down to 5.8% of traffic by changing the user agent. So what happened here? Could it be the same user on the same computer using multiple browsers on the same computer? No one does that, right? Now everyone does that because everyone's like, Edge is crap, let's use Internet Explorer. Or Microsoft is like, let's put two different browsers on the same computer, Edge and Internet Explorer. How about let's install Firefox as well? We'll run Firefox. Or I get fed up with Firefox, I'm going to jump over and use Chrome. But long story short, in the forensic perspective, is that if I can determine that a person is coming from an IP address, from a MAC address that's consistent, and then from a browser user agent that matches up with the user, then I can start to attribute traffic down to a specific user. If we can get that dead box at some point, it actually sees the box and verify this information, then really on the packet end, our job's pretty much done. So I'm down to 51 packets now. But let's look and see what kind of traffic is on this box here. So I see a lot of photos, a lot of stuff, but it looks like there's a lot of GET requests. You can see the info, and it's going out searching for this 8.18.91.138. So it's actually looking for photos. Now, one thing about Wireshark is it's not very, very friendly in just reconstructing certain files. But there's a nice little option in Wireshark that lets me export stuff out of this particular interface to something that's a little more user-friendly for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to File, and I'm going to go to Export Objects. Now, you have the ability to export quite a few objects out of a specific packet capture. But in this case, I'm going to pick Export Objects HTTP. Check out what we have here. A bunch of JavaScript, a bunch of JPEG files, and they all go back to Facebook, or this FBCDN, which is Facebook content. I don't know what we're going to get here, but you can see that we have quite a bit of info that's showing up here. So let's see what we get here. So I'm going to do a save all, and I'm going to point it to my desktop. I'm going to create a folder, and I'm going to call it export. And let's save it all. Save it all. Go to my desktop. Hopefully it dumps it all there. It probably put it all on my desktop. Hopefully it didn't do that. Yeah, let's check this out. So now I have a full exported folder of photos. So not only do I have the full-size photos there of different content, I also have, if you start going through, you'll see the thumbnails to those. So I basically crawled my own Facebook page and did a full packet capture on that. So it's picking up the thumbnails, it's picking up the actual full-size files. So it reconstructs what files that it can in HTTP. One thing that we'll get into tomorrow that'll be key, and I'll be turning you guys loose with this and helping you out, is that we're going to do full exploit kit reconstructions with this. So what this gives you the ability to do is to export out like JavaScripts, lets you export out full files that may be transferred in the exploit kit, and even photos. We know photos never carry malware, right? Videos either. But you can see here that this is, if they're browsing, full-blown porn sites, it's going to show up. So if you're capturing on the network, that's a pretty good full-size photo. I don't, that's clear, that's me, right? And some random child. So you also see other pictures. There's this deviant hacker in the background there, so sitting in his box. That one time I went to visit Obama and they wouldn't let me in. There's a small, went to actually go see Obama and they were like, no, you can't go in there. So I had to look from a distance. But you can kind of see that all this, puts back together. It's an easy option. If you have packets, go to File and export the objects. That's one of the easiest things in Wireshark you can possibly do. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up and kind of make you guys aware that does exist. So I was able to export those out. I can also export those out based upon the filter that I've set. So it's all about distilling down traffic and getting to a point where you're fairly comfortable with the traffic that you have. I gave you a PDF file in that download of all the display filters that you can possibly imagine. Display filters can be your best friend, and especially compounding display filters. That really works out well. So this is where, especially if you're doing, malware reconstruction or breaking down malware and exploit kits, these compound filters will really help you out. Now here's a problem with Wireshark. I want to bring up this fact, is that if I'm setting up a packet capture in Wireshark, if I'm running a packet capture in Wireshark and I've got this file open, one of the things that I can do, I'm just going to close this out and restart it. Actually, I'll just run it new. So if I start just a standard capture, if I click on the wire, that shark there, there's no interface selected. Well, I need to start it up as an admin. If I start capturing on ETH0, the problem with this of capturing directly within Wireshark, where's this stuff going? If I set up a capture, now this is a live capture, of course, and you can see that, I'm capturing on ETH. It's going to allocate an IP address, go through its UDP process, and if I go to where's all this stuff going? It's going directly to the hard drive. It's being cached. It's not being saved to a file. I see a lot of network folks make this mortal mistake. They'll set that, and then they'll just take off. And then the computer slows up, and then it crashes, and then it restarts, and they come back and they missed it all. So don't just start up a capture and then just say, oh, I'll save it later. You have the ability to basically go in and start a capture from scratch. Go ahead and quit that. Go ahead and start up a new instance of this. You have the ability, whenever you go into and create a new packet capture, is when you go into the capture options, you can do an output file. And when you save that to PCAP, make sure that you send that to a file. And I'll just call it test.pcap. Actually, we're selecting a capture file there. So we can capture to So we can use a temporary file. We can call it test.pcap. See if it'll let us do it without setting it. So I can either save as a pcap-ng or a pcap. I usually capture into just straight up pcap files. And it will also create a new file automatically after so many kilobytes. So if you want to like concatenate and break up your files, if you're limited on space, or you think you're going to get massive chunks of files, you can break that up. So let's say I'm going to break it up into every 1 megabyte. You also have the ability to use a ring buffer with 2 files or 1 file. And what that ring buffer will do is it will limit, and it will lessen the load on Wireshark as far as how much it's being dumped into a file. So I'm going to go ahead and see. Let's go ahead and make sure we're capturing on ETH0. I'm going to capture that. Now, it doesn't say, it says, okay, the file to which the capture would be saved could not be opened, no such file or directory. So what I could do there is, if I go back into that capture filter again, I'm going to add it to, I'm going to go to Browse, and I'm actually going to add it into my example. So it says, do you want to replace this? Yeah, let's go ahead and replace it. So it doesn't like the fact that I didn't create a new file. It doesn't like that directory. It doesn't like to send that captured file. This is why one of the reasons I prefer to use TCP-dump, because of the options. It can get kind of wonky. Another reason that one of the drawbacks is by the time you set and fight buffer space, and is it going to do the same thing again? No. By the time you set up your capture interfaces and do all that, capture buffer can really take up a lot of space. So keep in mind that the oldest data can get purged out if there's not enough space in your Wireshark buffer to save your old data. So that's another reason why I prefer going and setting up those options beforehand, or just jumping over and using TCP-dump or T-Sharp. Another thing, we already set up what we call some display filters or post filters. Pre-filters and post filters are basically the same thing. They use what we call BPF primitives, which is the Berkeley packet filter language. So if you understand pre-capture filters well, if you know how to limit out based upon IP and concatenate, you can basically set your post-capture filters. I always recommend to students set post-capture filters, because post-capture filters are, it's better to have the data and to filter the data than to not have the data and not be able to filter the data, at least from a forensic perspective. So display filters will let us look at the capture that still exists in the trace. So in this case, I set the display filter as 192.168.0.100. The display filters work primarily the same. I can even display out and do a port display on port 80 or whatever, like a TCP port. I can also pipeline those and look for multiple ports as well. So I can set kind of and compound those filters to look to say, okay, what about port 80 and port 3389? What about port 80 and port 443? Why would that be important? Why would I want to set a filter that filters out 80 and port 443? You can get HTTP and HTTPS, which is fairly common these days, and then you can point your decryption keys towards it, decrypt that data if you get to that point. Also, there's a nice little option. I've given you all those display filter examples. Also giving you a cheat sheet for that. But there's a nice little option at the bottom there that helps as well. And I want to show you this while I'm in this option. Let's see if I can leave my. It's taken my browser hostage. All right, let's go back to Wireshark. And it finally opens. All right.
It's not on the screen.
It's not on the screen. It's that presenter mode. I try to stay in slideshow. I'll try to just keep it going back and forth. When you hit one button, there it is. So back in the screen now, one of the things that I can do here is, let's just say that I want to search for a specific term. This is probably, of all the years I've been teaching Wireshark, people say this is the most useful option that they've found so far. If I type in frame contains, and I want to search for my name, I can filter out every frame that has my last name in it. So this limits out even further the ability to limit out. Now I'm down to like 14 packets that have my name in it. So in the network forensics session tomorrow, remember that, because that now limits out traffic down to 14 packets that have my name in it. So let's say you have an exploit kit, and you know that exploit kit has a name of like, nuclear in the file name or something like that. You can do a frame contains. You don't even have to put an equal in there. Do a frame contains, and you can pretty much just steal all that traffic down. Or they used a particular website like, anonymousemail.com or something like that. You can filter out that traffic just basically by a frame contains. So that goes into this part of the frame, and it looks for instances of that particular search term. So if you go down and look there it is. There's my name in that specific frame. So every packet in that capture should have that. So that's pretty cool that allows you to do that. That's one of my favorite options in Wireshark, at least personally. Probably if you've never used it before. Another thing about display filters as well, as I mentioned before the break, I would recommend using filter expressions until you get to the point that you memorize your expressions. I would also copy, if you make a long compound filter expression that you're commonly going back to, copy and paste that in a text file and just paste it back into the display filter and then just run it. I mean, that's what I commonly do all the time. Just save your favorite display filters, go back and use them. But really building this is the display filter expression is pretty it's pretty intuitive. It's not very hard to figure out. I can also set up based upon certain strings as well. So I can also do if I can do a synchronized packet, so synchronizing knowledge packets that are sent back and forth, and TCP flags, which is a synchronizing acknowledgement. So I can look for any send act commands that are sent back and forth between a specific server. Let's just say if we're dealing with like an APT, some kind of persistent threat that's just constantly bombarding our network, I can look at those send act commands. How many of you guys have run nmap scans before? So nmap scans, usually if you're running a certain nmap scan, you're just basically running a massive amount of pings on a network, and looking for open ports. The thing about Nmap scans is they look very notorious on the network. So you're going to see a synchronized command with a single acknowledgement command, and then it moves on to the next service. So it's going to be like it's going to try port 80, and it's going to move on to another port, and it's going to try that, and it's very uniform. Well, what do we know about user traffic? It's not uniform. It's not going to have that consistency to it. So if you're going through a packet capture and you see, okay, there's a synchronized with no acknowledgement command, or there's just a SYN-ACK of the same service trying different ports across the board, then probably it's indicative that your network's getting scanned, basically. So hackers look very uniform on the other end, believe it or not, on the packet end. It's kind of surprising, but I've run we've run our own exploits, and Bill will run exploits a lot just to see what they look like on the packet end, and they're very, very uniform in some cases. Even if they're pushing their payload across in RAM, we can still see that packet traffic and can reconstruct that packet traffic. So I'm not going to spend a long time on, per se, filter expressions. We already talked about that. I'll leave that to you. If it is the wrong syntax, though, it will show up red. So if you do have a good filter, the correct syntax in that bar will show up green. So there's a lot of different logical expressions that you can set up, and I talked about the and or. You can do like an IP, but not this IP, or a range of IPs. There's so many different options of filter expressions you can go into. I could probably spend a day on filter expressions, put you guys to sleep. If you ever need your kids to go to sleep, just show them some Wireshark before bed. It works all the time. I can also, already mentioned about saving the filtered packets after using a displayed filter. So what I can do here is if I filter out the packets with a display filter, I can go to File and Export Packet Dissections and save those out as a plain text file. So for you guys that love grep, I'm a huge grep user, love using grep. And now since Windows announced that they're going to utilize Bash in Windows 10, man, I'm going to be doing this a lot more nowadays. Export out the packet dissections as a plain text file and just go and grep them. That's an easy way to do it, so you can treat them just like log files. So you can also do it as a CSV file, or you can do it as an XML file. So there's a couple of different ways. So a lot of people say, well, I don't want to deal with packet captures because I can't grep them. Well, hogwash, you can grep now that you know that you can export them out as plain text files. You can also do a packet range and select displayed, or you can do a summary line or detail. So if you want to see like the packet summary markup language, like PSML, PXML, something that other tools can read, you can also export out that way. Another neat option in Wireshark, this is where you get into more packet dissections, is the protocol hierarchy. And if you click on it, if you go under protocol hierarchy under Analyze, I think I cut off the top of my menu there to show you where that was. If I go into, I didn't do that right. I'm having to open up Wireshark to see what happens here. There we go. So if I go into statistics and protocol hierarchy, I can essentially determine what the breakdown of my packets are. So in this case, it's pretty much understood that 100% of the traffic is coming across Ethernet. We're not dealing with anything but Ethernet. 98.7% of that is IP version 4. So in the OSI model and the protocol stacks, it breaks down that most of this is IP version 4. Well, let's get down here and look. So in the hypertext transfer protocol, which is HTTP, in the packets that we're looking at, so we're looking at filtered. We're looking at non-filtered traffic here. 92.2% of that is TCP traffic, and 11.2 of that 92% is HTTP. But take a look down here. What do you see? What's that right there? JPEG. So 2.2% of that traffic is basically images. So I could go, let's just say I want to see nothing but pictures. So if I'm using like SMTP as a service, or if I'm using POP, you guys know what SMTP is, right? That's the protocol which sends the email. So if SMTP traffic shows up in this packet capture, we can look at the SMTP traffic. If they're using a service like ICMP or POP to receive their email, we can also filter out based upon that. But I could easily go now and just look and say, okay, there's some GIF images, or GIF images, and I can apply that as a filter. Now I have all of my JPEG files, or at least all of my JPEG traffic showing up in the packet filter now, and it just says image-JFIF. So it's looking for the headers of the JPEG images, and it filters out based upon that. So that's a neat little option, if you're trying to direct towards certain traffic, you can really break it down by protocol hierarchy. So I'll give you guys hints into the network forensics section tomorrow, because this is where we're going to put a lot of this horsepower to work, is that look in the protocol hierarchy and break down what that hierarchy is, and you'll see specific services. Not saying giving away any hints, but SMTP email. So you can see what email was sent. But there is a packet capture in your Wireshark folder if you want to bring that in, that has some SMTP traffic in it. You can also go into and do a follow TCP stream, which is under the Analyze menu as well. So you go down to follow and then go into TCP stream. What that will do is that will show up a stream of traffic based upon what you're looking at. So all the red stuff in a packet capture is the stuff that you have sent or the user or the perpetrator has sent, and the blue stuff is what is being acknowledged by the server and sent back to you. So a lot of people don't really understand how that works, but that's your up and down traffic there. So what I can basically do is I can right click and I can either go up to Analyze or Statistics and go that way, or the easiest way to do it is just to right click and to go to Follow and TCP Stream. And now I can see that whole stream of data. So now I'm able to follow that entire stream, and you can see now that is a full transfer of those images, those Facebook images we were looking at earlier. That's a full decoding of that. It also gives the timestamps, so any part of that I highlight will show what packet and frame in that stream of where that's being pulled from. So for you guys that are forensic folks, you kind of see right there, there's the beginning of a JPEG of it. So that's JPEG file. So kind of cool that you can do that. You can also follow email tomorrow. I'll show you how to decode. We'll crack some SMTP passwords while following that stream. So I have some pre-built SMTP traffic. We'll go in. By default, SMTP does not encrypt the traffic. So some people will set up SMTP servers. If they authenticate, you can essentially crack their password unless they're going over an HTTP channel. So it's pretty straightforward. So we can get plain text passwords in there if we know how to decode them. You can also filter that out, that entire conversation, and you can either print that, you can do a save as, and you can save it out as just a raw file. So I could pretty much copy out that entire conversation, save it as a hex dump, ASCII, whatever you need it to be. You can also set the transfer, the up and down from the Facebook server back to our specific connection, or you can look at the up traffic, so or the down traffic, I'm sorry, that was being sent. So that's the easy way to break down traffic. Follow TCP stream. You can also filter out the TCP stream as well. So if I go in and filter that out, and I set the filter, it will set in Wireshark. I don't know if you noticed that or not, but it set a TCP.stream EQ7. So depending on what stream that's set, in this case it's 7. So it's the 7th, transfer there. it will set the filter for you. So you're now looking at that whole stream of traffic broken down into packets. So if I transfer one picture across a packet or a capture file, it's going to break that down into multiple packets. So you can reconstruct those packets back together, export those out, put them together into something else. Another thing I can do is set up expert info. That's another thing under that menu that I can look at. The expert information, if there's any malformed HTTP packets. So say, for example, if I have a drop connection and it has to send acknowledgement commands back and forth over and over and over again, it will show any kind of duplicate acknowledgement commands that it's sent. So any kind of like duplicate packets, we know that in a case that if a packet is malformed, what is that usually indicative of? Malformed packets. Anybody good in networking here? Malformed packets could either be information that is being packaged to be something that it's not. In this case, it's just something they've added in. They added in version 1, but version 2 does a little bit better job with it. It looks at any kind of like HTTP packets that might be malformed, any kind of like oddities in packets. So you could sometimes look under there and see if you see anything that pops out. In this case, you can see that it tried a retransmission, probably because of a poor internet connection. So it sent a duplicate acknowledgement command in those packet numbers there. So that's kind of a cool option that breaks that down for you. Another option under the stats menu is the conversations filter that you can set up. The conversations filter will break down based upon the type of service that is breaking it down by. So I can break down on Ethernet, which is MAC address, so I can look at the MAC address that it's being sent from, or I can look at the IP address that it's broken down. So we can look and see what the address A and B was, how many packets were sent up, how many packets were sent back, how many the number of packets, the size of the packets, and the relative number of seconds that it took to get that response. So what I've normally found in that case, if you're looking at it like a persistent thread or an APT, you'll see those conversations be relatively uniform because the nmap is going in. The nmap is going in, and it's just like synchronize, acknowledgement, no, port locked. Okay, let's move on to the next port. Send, ACK, port locked. Move on to the next. Send, ACK. Oh, open port 135. Let me report that back. I'll get a different response for that. So you'll see a uniformity in the conversations because nmap sends the same packet and the same amount of packets per filter there. So if you ever run an nmap scan, run a packet capture, run an nmap scan, and just see the uniformity of it. You can also go back with the conversations and you can copy, click on that copy button. You can copy and click the copy button to copy all the text to the clipboard, and then you can just go back in and save that to a notepad and just grep it. I can't understate more the necessity and need to understand and learn grep. There is no way around it if you're really wanting to be good at what you do, learn grep. Because the ability of me to go in and carve out data, and I know this is a Wireshark session, but I always teach all of my kids, I call them kids, they're full-blown adults, but I teach them grep, and I also teach them a tool called ngrep, which is a network grep. And network grep will allow me to go in and search against PCAP files. I'll do a quick search here, or I'll do a quick demo to show you how you can search out stuff in PCAP files using ngrep. But the ability to go in and just search text files is kind of key. Grep doesn't do well against PCAP files because of just the structure. You can search them. ngrep's better, but for PCAP files. But if you want to get them in straight-up text files, then for more user-friendly grep, you can export them out into a text file. You can also do endpoint statistics. So if you go to Menu, Statistics, Endpoint, TCP, you can sort by the field in which they're transmitted. So TX stands for transmit, and RX stands for receive. So I'm going to go in there and show you the endpoints real quick. So if I go into statistics and do endpoints, I can look and see what MAC addresses are in this particular capture. So if I'm capturing at a core switch and I want to see what device is connected to that wireless network under that specific time, I can filter, and then I can go look in the Ethernet filter, and I can see there's my MAC address and my suspect right there. Who has the bulk of the traffic? Well, there's the D-Link switch there, and here is that laptop that we were looking at. I didn't say it was a laptop, but it is a laptop. And you can see who has the brunt of the traffic there. There's a bump filter there, just basically plug some info in, just send some packets across a couple of services. And there's another third MAC address, which we're not sure. So if you're looking at a network and you have like a ghost device on there, you might, I've heard people go to search warrant scenes and start a packet capture just so they can find all the devices connecting to the network. It's odd, but I guess it's a way around it, per se. But you can kind of get a lay of the land of where the traffic's going and who it's going to physically. So I could filter out, pick any of those particular filters there, and apply that as a filter as well. So it's real easy to go into any of these menus and apply filters. In the IPs, I can find an IP and I can easily find that, right-click it, and apply as a filter. I can also go in and colorize that filter. So I could colorize that filter where it shows up as a certain color. So I can limit that to a display filter where it only displays the IP addresses that's in that packet transfer. In this case, we only have 2 IPs that's going up and down. So you have a lot of options here. I don't have any IPv6 traffic, but you can do the same thing with IPv6. TCP, you can see that TCP traffic is one of the high in the protocol stack. Can't have IP without TCP, right? So you're going to have some stuff there. UDP, if they're using like any kind of DNS queries or anything like that, you can easily see that they went through DNS, and there's some UDP chatter on there where they went out and requested. They made a call to Facebook to get that data back. And of course, I was talking about copying that to a CSV file, so you can easily copy that, open up a spreadsheet, paste that into the spreadsheet, and be done with it. So that's the screenshot that I gave you. Since I don't have Excel, you can just basically copy and paste that data in, and then you can save that CSV file and then grep against it all day. So you could also do flow graphs. This is another thing that I like to do is flow graphs. And in flow graphs, you can look and see based upon IPs of what the traffic was like up and down. So you can see that the time filter is there, and whether it was a GET or a TCP or an HTTP, and you can basically look at the up and down traffic visually. This is good to put on courtroom presentations or presentations to upper management to say, okay, what's going on in that network? What does it visually look like? And I can look at that flow graph and look at the flow up and down. One of the keys in network forensics is looking at network flows, especially with like the flow of traffic back and forth, because we know that if we're dealing with APTs or exploit kits, we'll have this big, massive, because a lot of attacks, they now use buffers and RAM now. You'll see like this massive, I hate to use this word, but it's like an enema of traffic into a buffer. And then it runs its exploit, and then it's back out again. You have no indication on that in the hard drive if you take the PC out, other than maybe like a rootkit or something that picked up. But, in your packet transfer or your packet capture, you can see the flow of that data back and forth and how big these particular files were. So it gives you visually a little bit better look at what maybe an attack looks like on the packet end. And then I went over earlier the export objects, which is really the key. If you do an export objects, you can export HTTP information and then get that information out. So probably one of the more useful things of packet capture to use. But Wireshark is limited. One of the tools I'm going to bring into the mix tomorrow is, I don't really super like it, but we're going to install it and use it anyway, is Network Miner. I joke with the students, it's like the Armitage of network forensics. I don't know if you guys have used Armitage, but it's just like click, click, click. Oh, I've got a shell. I've run a 20-year-old exploit. I've done something big, and my screen turns into lightning. So, this Network Miner is kind of like the Armitage. This is more like the Metasploit if I were to liken it to a tool. It's clunky. It's sometimes hard to use, but it does work well. You can also do HTTP analysis. So if I do an HTTP analysis, I have 3 options. I can do a packet counter, I can do requests, but I can also do a load distribution. And if I look at load distribution, this is a key, and this is something that a lot of people don't look at. But if I have like bursts of traffic that's coming from specific servers, my goodness, how useful is that? If you are getting bombarded by an Iranian server, and you don't know where that traffic is coming from, and let's just say somebody's running you're getting DDoS to death, and somebody's like, figure out what's going on. Set a packet capture. See where that traffic's coming from, see where the packets are coming from, and where the bursts are coming in. You can see in this case that 88% of traffic here in the HTTP request, you can kind of get a breakdown of where your traffic's coming from, load distribution wise. So if you have a culprit in that's requesting, or your firewall's getting dinged to death, and it's slowing down operations, maybe try packet capture and look at load distribution and see what you can find. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised to even break down by domain and IP address of what you'll find. In this case, I have breakdown requests from, it's relatively small, but I have 8 packets out of 72 there that came from Facebook, so I can see what bubbles at the top or not. It's a really, really small packet capture. I can also do packet counters, which work just as well. So I can look and see, what services were being ran here. Another useful option. So I can see what the burst rate is and what the percentage of, the packets being sent across the network, what was being sent. So there's a lot of get packets there. So there's certain attacks that basically put a different footprint in the they look like. Nmap does it. Metasploit does it. If you're running something, if you're dealing with a script kiddie and they're like, running Armitage or something on you, Armitage has, certain. I've even looked at, packet captures where we run set, and set is very indicative on the packet end. It has uniform. If we're running an exploit through set, and let's just say like we're doing like mass spoofing of emails or whatever, you're going to see that traffic on the packet end. So you're going to have characteristics of these attacks, and they're going to show up on the packet end. And that may be all you have, because all this stuff goes into buffer and then it's gone. It's also a breakdown of like requests. You can look and see where the request came from. In this case, you can see exactly what I request. So all those GIF images, those JPEG images, what was the request from these servers? That's another key element. If I'm going out and requesting from a website a Silverlight, if I'm requesting Silverlight, and then all of a sudden it starts downloading Flash as well, maybe I'm getting hit with an exploit kit here, because that's what exploit kits do. They take a lot of different, and they exploit services that look like a legitimate site, and then they start to download the content. And then the exploit kit, it basically downloads into your PC, it unpacks, and then it starts its work of putting the rootkit there, getting the backdoor, setting that up to go through a full-blown compromise. That's something, if you're interested in getting deeper into the weeds tomorrow, I have a full exploit kit packet capture. So we'll break down the packets of the exploit kit, and then I also have the files that were installed on the PC
after the exploit kit was run. So we're going to do a virus analysis on that to show you the breakdown and how terribly, terribly poor antivirus does at identifying exploit kits. It's awful. There is no better way to say it. Antivirus is not going to cover your butt against exploit kits, and that's where all this ransomware is coming in. So I hear people at all levels say, "I have antivirus, I'll be all right. I'll be not against these newer exploit kits," because I could run one, and anybody outside here can tell you, I could run that exploit kit, compromise the machine, and virtually undetected by like 50 out of 55 antivirus clients. It's crazy. It's absolutely insane. Here's another thing about Wireshark performance I want to focus on. Don't use capture filters pre. Always use your post-capture display filters. That way, if you miss something, you can always, it's better, the mantra, it's better to have too much than not enough, right? That's what my grandma always said on Thanksgiving. So I'll go eat Thanksgiving dinner with my grandmother, and she'll fix like 5 turkeys and 4 hams, and we'll have like 10 years worth of food left over. But it's better to have more than not enough. So use the Thanksgiving turkey philosophy. Also increase your read buffer size if possible. That keeps, if you're setting a capture filter, if you have no capture filters, it's going to fill up your hard drive. Wireshark will. If you're just capturing in Wireshark, it will slow down your system. It'll crash your system. You'll go back and you'll look, and you may be running, but you don't have all your packet captures back. So increase your read buffer size if you can. Also, don't update your screen dynamically, meaning that don't refresh. Just save the file. Easy way to get around this, use TCP download. Use another tool besides Wireshark to capture your packets. Use Wireshark as your protocol analysis tool. Also, get a faster computer. I don't really have to say that. It's like, we always want faster computers. That's the forensic thing. Is like, if you have a problem with a software not running, isn't that the answer that everyone in forensics gives you? Just get a faster computer, like up your RAM. No, get something a little bit beefier and faster. Look at deploying multiple captures. So let's say if you're looking at a segmented network, it would be silly for me to deploy this massively big laptop in that segment of the network. So get you about maybe a couple of Raspberry Pis and put the Raspberry Pi in that segment of the network. Get plenty of storage. You can plug in USB storage, save it to that file, let it run. If you have a breach event or something like that you need to do this kind of stuff with, let it run, pull the Raspberry Pi, pull it into Wireshark and view it. So you don't need anything more advanced than Raspbian. You can install TCP dump to Raspbian, but Wireshark's it's gonna sweat in Raspberry Pi. So you can bring back those old. Somebody asked me, what do I do with all those old Raspberry Pis? Remember the original ones? Use them, deploy them as packet captures. Also, run in a Linux distro. I do not like Wireshark or any packet capture tools in Windows, because Windows, you have that big overhead that just to get Windows kernel to run. So you have Windows, and then you're piling a packet capture on top of it, and then you're dealing with a protocol dissector like Wireshark. It's going to slow it down. Linux, you can pretty much it just handles this kind of stuff better. There's just less overhead. That's just Linux mantra in general. Also, use a tap. There's so many different taps out there that you can pick from. You can do the LAN tap like I brought in. You can do, you can inject yourself in wirelessly. You can also do what they call vampire tapping. If you create these little vampire taps to tap into your network and just let it sit there. I had a vampire tap in the old network where I used to work, where I could just go in and tap into the port if I needed to capture packets. So I already had a pre-configured port that I did my packet capturing on. So did I run it? Maybe once every 6 months, just to see if there's something that the SIM and firewall wasn't picking up on. This was more like, this is something I needed to do by hand. This is more of the art form. Let the SIM, let your firewalls do all the heavy lifting. This is for SIM's not picking it up. or I have a snort. Didn't you guys use snort? Have you probably set up snort rules? So one thing I'll do tomorrow is exploit kits. Snort does a really good job picking up exploit kits. So you may have a snort rule that picked up an exploit kit, and now you have to follow up on that. So you want to say, okay, what happened here? So you have multiple users who are now experiencing this ransomware issue. You may be able to go in and tap into your network, do a packet capture to verify that your snort rules were correct. So that may be all you have to follow up on. Antivirus doesn't throw anything, and that's something we'll look at tomorrow as well. The EK that I have, the only follow-up that I have in the investigation is a snort rule that showed that possibly, that there was some type of exploit that was sent across the network. And that's it. So it's one of those things, where you have a little bit of nugget, but we want to set up a packet capture to see exactly, did that indeed happen. As far as like taps as well, sometimes it's better just to pre-configure a switch and just capture. But be careful, because if you're capturing at a core level, you think you're getting all the packets and you're not. Sometimes you'll capture if you're certain types of settings in the network where your packet capture will look like it's all coming from the same MAC. I give the students a midterm, and the guys that are in here, they're going to benefit from this, the network forensic, because they have to take this course. I see some Marshall students. You're going to look at the traffic, and they say, well, filter out by MAC. Well, they filter out by the MAC, and they see like they lost like 2 packets, in their filter. It's because the network in which we inserted our packet capture is only capturing the MAC address of the switch. So all the packets look like they're coming from the same MAC address, which is confusing. So it's not always, a filter doesn't always react as planned. You have to go beyond that. So then you have to look at user agents. You have to look at IP addresses. You have to look at timestamps. You have to take all those factors into account to attribute to a specific user or your threat within your network. I never resolve names and IPs. I don't like to set up MACs and IPs. I don't like to see or Wireshark to tell me where my IP is coming from. I just want to see the IP. So I always turn off and don't do any resolving of names. I can go out and do a who is pretty easily if I need to know where an IP is coming from. If I want to turn it on, the problem is it pulls from these databases and you get a lot of false positive hits. To say that there are companies out there that have never falsely attributed traffic to certain countries before would be an understatement. You guys know what I'm talking about if you're an InfoSec. There's been reports that have been released out there that say, oh, these came from China. Really? Let's look at the artifacts of the specific packet captures. And I'm looking at these reports and I'm saying, man, are you sure that's from China? Because it doesn't look like from China to me. Do people in China use those user agents and the packet in? I mean, they have full packet captures. They've captured this, and you're looking and you're saying, did they really use that browser there? Think about it. I mean, cultures do things differently. Do you think they use the same browser, in certain areas of China than they do in Russia? So attribution, sometimes we kind of falsely attribute people based upon IPs. The federal government does that, right? Oh, well, this came from North Korea, and nobody will question it because North Korea is like, hey, we did it. Yeah, we did it. So, follow up on these threats. You may know where they're coming from. And that gives you a leg up to go, and if you're in the private end, to go to the higher-ups or the people that are running the admin and saying, hey, let's block out this block of IPs. Let's block out these MAC addresses. Let's block out this stuff from coming in. There's no reason. Here I go on a digression here. There is no good reason for me to allow IPs in certain networks to come from like Iran and the Eastern Bloc of Europe. Really, think about it. Now, at Marshall University, we tried that once, and I'll give you a disclaimer. We tried that, and then we found out we were getting a lot of calls to our help desk. Why? Because we have a lot of students from those areas of the country, and they couldn't call home. So they're trying to access Skype, and they can't get a hold of their parents, and just panic. They think something bad's happened. So depending on your network, but if you're like running a state network and there's no legitimate reason for that traffic to be coming in or going out, just block it.
All states and governments usually do some business. Even because you have to talk to all ambassador locations. You have people, you have military members, and probably stationed over there. So it's never good for any actual government organization to block based on geographical reasons. I've seen that in multiple areas.
Yeah, it just depends on how your traffic goes in and out of there. But if we're looking at blocks of IPs that we know that are legitimate compromised IP ranges coming from countries that are very, very vulnerable. And you guys know we can proxy through a lot of different IPs, but let those linger out there and just keep bombarding us with crap. I'd look and see where your heavy traffic's coming from.
I mean, known malicious IPs are different than entire ranges.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to block an entire country out. It's probably an overstatement there. But there's no really, if you have a threat that's coming in from a range of IPs, you can block those out. And I always say, do something if you have a problem. Then fix it after the fact. It's easier to unblock an IP than it is to block an IP. Usually you'll know if you're running into any trouble because you can go to the help desk and see where they're getting calls from. So, it's an antiquated philosophy, but it still kind of works. But I would be very leery of attributing Macs and IPs, mainly because I can spoof my Mac and proxy my IP and make it look like I am an Apple device coming from them. So, but I can spoof my Mac and proxy my IP, but my spoofed Mac and proxied IP are going to be consistent in a packet capture. You see what I mean? See what I'm talking about there? So, we can still attribute based upon that. A lot of dummies will spoof their Mac and then not change it back or just leave it like I'm going to cover my tracks here and look like I'm coming from another device and not, change it back. So every time they come into the network, the MAC is the same. So you can got to do attribution that way. And if you get their physical box, then you can just verify that. Even if they change back their MAC, you can get a physical image on the drive. Sometimes you can call back that information of the old MAC address they had before they changed it back. So I put a couple of slides in there about the post-processing. There's a couple of tools like PowerGrep that you can use. TCP extract, you can take a TCP file, run it through TCP extract, and it will extract all of the packets into individual text files for you or individual folders and files, so you can easily grep those a lot easier. So let's say... I promised that I would get to show you a little bit about ngrep. One tool I'm going to get to tomorrow. I'm going to go ahead and back out with PowerPoint here. Maybe. And I'm going to go back into SIFT. And I want to show you the tool ngrep. And ngrep should be, go ahead and kill off. Make sure ngrep is installed. So, yeah, it's still running. Kill off whatever. It looks like Wireshark may be running in this window. So before I know we got a couple minutes, so I can finish up a little bit sooner. So if I run like an ngrep and against I may hold that off a little tomorrow, guys, because I'll get the switches set. But ngrep is a good tool as far as carving against packets. I'll bring that in network forensics tomorrow. I can search for keywords and pipeline those keywords in the packet captures. It's basically just grep for packets. So if you have some time tonight, one of the things that we'll do tomorrow, and if you have some time tonight and you want to come back tomorrow, go back and run this lab exercise back in your room. It's an evidence packet analysis. The first thing we'll be working on tomorrow in the network forensics. I want you to kind of start looking for the PCs that were used. The PCs that were used, I'll give you a hint there. You can look by the NBNS, the NetBIOS, and see who actually requested in DHCP an IP address. You can also look for the IP addresses of the devices, the MAC address, the protocols found in packets. So do a protocol dissection. Look for the protocols. Look for user-related data, exported files, and endpoints. We have some Marshall swag I'll probably bring back tomorrow, and I'll probably throw these challenges out. I know you're doing, your King of the Hill and capture the flag, but we'll also kind of work that kind of session in as well. But look for any exported files or endpoints in that packet, and we'll do a breakdown of that tomorrow and systematically go through that in a forensic manner, which is kind of an extension on today. So I always hate just giving you Wireshark, but I want to set the foundation for you guys that are coming back tomorrow. And if you can, try to get SIF set up in the morning, or at least get VMware set up, and we'll help you set up SIF and start capturing packets tomorrow as well, or start analyzing packets. I'm sorry. So that's pretty much all I have on Wireshark. If you need to get in contact with me, my email address is josh.brunty@marshall.edu. I have some cards out on the table. Take a lanyard. Please take a lanyard. We have so many lanyards. They're selling ones. Take a lanyard, hang it back in your wall. We won't run out. Take brochures, anything, and if any kind of questions you have, forensic-wise, that you need, you have 2 resources out there, actually 3, John, Bill, and myself. That's what we do now. That's the fun part. If I don't know the answer, I can find somebody within the realm of where I work that will get the answer for you. So if you can't figure out a protocol or just can't figure out something on the network end, let me know and we'll break it down together. Thank you guys. Thanks for sticking around. I'll hopefully see you guys tomorrow.